So, good morning, students. My name is Rohit Jain. I'm a practicing architect from New Delhi. So, as a background, I would like to just say that I have completed my architectural education in 1992. And subsequently, I earned my BEM degree from SPA Delhi. And I have been running my own practice since 2006 in the name of RSMS Architects. One of the specialty that I have is coordinating building services and its implementation. And other is that I'm a little technologically driven and have been working extensively in BIM since 2005. So having given you the background of who you are listening to, I would just like to tell you that this is a series of lectures in which we'll make you aware about the fire and life safety issues. And this will have a focus on active systems. Since there is a good chance that you will not be designing a system, so I'll be focusing on the active systems and not on the passive ones. And we'll be learning these basics from a site project team member point of view and not as a designer. Now, moving forward, on this course, I would actually like to draw your attention to the fact that whenever you become a part of a site team, it could be from a contractor side or the client side, then it would be expected that you have some adequate knowledge of the fire life safety fire and life safety, based on which certain responsibilities would be given to you. So at the end of the lecture, you should be able to understand, I would say, 4 things. So I hope to give you this adequate information that would allow you to understand the absolute basic concepts in fire life safety. That means that if somebody talks about fire life safety, you will understand what that person is trying to say. You will broadly understand what constitutes an active firefighting system. Then you will be able to read the drawings issued by the consultant. And you will also need to know, you will know what needs to be looked at when you are handling a project on the site. You will know what things you have to look at when you receive the set of drawings from the consultants. So in short, this would be a foundation course and not a course to make you an expert designer. Now, what I put into the lecture is something that I have gathered experience over the last 25 years. That experience I have actually tried to put it in this presentation. So I hope you find it interesting. So now let's learn about the basic concepts about fire and life safety. And we'll begin that by looking at a few fire incidents. The important fire incidents that come to my mind are the 1997 Upahar cinema one. There was one in Kumbakonam. There was a school fire. There was a hospital fire in Calcutta by the name of Amery in 2011. There was a Kamla Mill fire. I'm sure this would have happened when you were in college in 2017. There was a Surat fire just last year. And there was a Anaj Mandi fire in Delhi in 2019. So let's walk through these fire incidents. So before I go ahead, I could just like to ask you, does anybody have any recollection of any of these fire incidents? You can unmute and you can actually speak out.
Sir, the Surat one. Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, sir, the Surat one, that's probably famous for the students dying.
Right. So do you know what happened in that fire?
Like they constructed something on the 3rd or 4th floor probably, which is not allowed. They kind of constructing something temporary structure, and I think the AC equipment, they had some short circuit, which led to the fire inside the structure. Probably.
No, you are almost right. So that's good that you recollect at least one of the fire.
So
Any
So this is Abhay Malik, and sir,
Right, Abhay?
I'm little bit aware about this Upar cinema fire. There was a short circuit in projector room, and
Mm-hmm.
that was because of that thing, and there were no fire exits. Like, means no adequate fire exits were there. That's why all were have to stay inside, and the whole incident happened.
So, Abhay, what actually had happened in Upar was that there was a basement, there was a oil-based transformer,
Okay, sir.
and the basement there was a car parking also.
Hmm.
So what happened was that oil transformer exploded,
Oh,
and the burning oil actually ignited all the cars that were parked there.
okay, sir.
So other than that, there were other reasons that I'll talk a little later. So good that you remember the Upar cinema. Anybody else remembers any of these fire incidents? Okay. So let's walk through these incidents and see the incidents and the implications. So Upar cinema fire happened in 1997 and 59 people died in it. So as I said that the basement had a car park and an electrical oil transformer. Parking was meant for about 18 cars, but they had stuffed in 36 cars in there. So the oil transformer burst and it was 5:20 in the evening. And the cars, about 20 odd cars caught fire, and then the fire spread. The smoke actually reached the auditorium and it was not taken out over there. There were no public announcements that was made inside the auditorium because nobody even knew that there was a fire that has happened. There were no fire alarms. The employees also did not know that a fire had broken out. It was so bad that the projector operator also was not given instructions to stop the film. The film was going on while the smoke was coming out. The fire exits were locked and approximately 59 people died in the smoke. Now, this is one of the fires that had really shook me in those times. It was the Kumbakonam school in 2004. 89 kids died in this fire. And these kids were in the class 1 to class 3. So what had happened that on the terrace, they had made some classrooms with a thatched roof. And it was a residential building. And they also put up a kitchen in the terrace. So while cooking the noon meals, okay, and the class 1 to 3 students were kept on the topmost floor and the senior students were kept on the lower floors, and it had only one staircase. So while making the noon meals, the fire actually, the roof caught fire, and 89 children were charred beyond recognition. Imagine, this happened in 2004. Then in Amri fire of 2011, 89 patients died because of smoke, and that too the fire happened in the corridors because they had kept some inflammable materials, and the smoke from those cleaning chemicals suffocated the patients that were in the ICU and other areas. Now I think so now you would be able to recollect this Kamla Mill fires of 2017. 14 people had died. It was a very tragic accident in which people had gone to party into a rooftop restaurant, and because of some flying embers, the canopy caught fire, and there was only one exit out of the building. 14 people died in this. This is the Surat fire. As rightly said, it is a coaching institute in Surat, and what they did was, it was in 2001. It was the building was sanctioned as a residential building. In 2007, they built up a commercial complex over there instead of a residential building. Then they added up the third floor, and the access they made was with a wooden staircase. Now the fire started because of a short circuit near on the ground floor, and it spread, and the wooden staircase got burnt. So the students actually suffocated. Some died because of suffocation, and many tried to escape by jumping through the windows, and they died from that. And later it was found that there is no firefighting system anywhere on any floor. 22 kids died in this fire. Now, this is a very tragic fire that happened in December of 2019 in Delhi. It is called the Anaj Mandi fire. It was a small building, again a residential building, in a lot of gully. There was not enough access also to reach there. And 43 people were inside that building. And it was some kind of an industrial operation. And that building got fire. And the fire started near the entrance. So neither could anybody escape, neither they could they move on to any adjacent building. 43 people died in this Anaj Mandi fire. So now that I have made you aware of these fire incidents, can someone tell me what were the reasons for these fatal accidents? What do you think happened?
I guess there were no proper facility for like fire prevention measures were not taken in the buildings adequately.
Okay, that's one reason.
And no fire exit. No proper fire exit.
No proper fire exits is okay.
Panic.
Very nice. Exactly a good answer.
Casualties due to smoke.
Yeah. Smoke is also was the biggest killer in all these cases.
No knowledge of disaster management.
All right. I would. Can we term this as no knowledge about what is required as per the codes? Can we say that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody else?
So change in structure,
Change in structure.
the use of structure.
Okay. So I would say that it's a change in occupancy. Can I use
Yeah.
that term?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Change in occupancy. So what I've heard till now is that it was that firefighting prevention tools or options were not taken. There was no proper fire exits. There was a lot of panic that happened in the buildings. Smoke was one of the biggest killers. And we can assume that the people who were operating the building did not have the code knowledge. And probably there was a misuse that the building was in there was a change in occupancy for which the building was allowed. Right. These are actually the reasons that happened in all of these fire accidents. And I feel that the fire was totally preventable. So the reasons that I have actually written down were that there was a massive panic, all because the codes were flouted. They never followed any codes. Then the operation of the building was flawed, like in the Kumbhakonam fire. How could they put in so many children in such a small building with just one exit? Imagine they were just, in class 1 and class 3 and on the topmost floor, and they all died. Just imagine what could have happened on the roof that day. Firefighting equipment was not installed. So the reason why I'm elaborating and taking more time on this part of the presentation is because I want you to know that soon, someday, after you complete your education at this college, you will be going into responsible positions. And you will be part of some kind of a decision-making process where your decisions will cause the people's lives to be affected. So the lives will be dependent on your actions. So remember this particular part. And I hope that I'm able to tell you and communicate to you certain concepts that you will use throughout your career. So one of the lessons that my professors taught me was that panic will seldom develop, even if there is a potential danger in front of you. And the panic will, not develop if the occupants are moving in the direction of the exits, which they can see and hear, alarms if they can hear, and they can move through the exits. And there is no obstruction or congestion in the path of travel. So that means that if there is any uncertainty in terms of location of exits, there'll be panic. If there is presence of smoke or fumes, there'll be panic. If there is any obstructions, for example, that if a person just stumbles and falls on the stairs, the panic will build up. And this danger is increases significantly when there is a large number of people who are trapped in a confined area and they are not guided towards the exits. And there is no safety announcements that are implemented or practiced. So announcements, sound-based announcements are one of the important things that are to be required to guide the occupants to safety and to control panic. So, the main focus of the National Building Code and all the codes across the world is that you have to prevent the panic from building in while the people are exiting the affected area. Now, till this point, I have sensitized you to the examples of fire tragedy. So from this point forward, my lecture has two parts. And in the first session, we will do the part 1, in which I'm going to teach you 9 basic concepts. There are only 9 basic concepts that I think are important for you to know. And in part 2 of the lectures, we'll go through actual project drawings and then familiarize ourselves with the different components of active firefighting systems. So at this stage, if you have any questions about the first part, you can please unmute your mics and speak up. All right. So moving forward, now the term that we actually keep encountering in our daily regular life is that we use the term called firefighting systems. Now, the more appropriate and inclusive word is fire and life safety systems. And that's how our building codes are built up. Typically in fire life safety, there are 3 topics. Part 1 would be the fire prevention. The part 2 is life safety. And mostly these are the responsibilities that architect takes care of while he's designing the building. The third part, which is the fire protection, this is usually left to the MEP consultant or a fire consultant or some kind of a specialized consultant who takes care of these fire protections. So when the designer is working on the fire protection, there is one concept that he actually keeps in mind while designing. He knows that absolute safety from fire is not attainable in practice. In real life, you cannot achieve absolute safety. What you can do is that you can try and provide a certain degree of safety from fire. So this is the first concept that you should know, that absolute safety from fire is not achievable. All you can do is to provide a certain degree of safety from fire. And the part of the first concept is that the fire life safety system has 3 areas where it has to be taken care of. One is fire prevention, second is life safety, and the third is fire protection. And different people have responsibilities towards each of these 3 components. Now, the second concept I want to tell you is the NBC. Now, can anybody tell me what does NBC mean and what is NBC?
National Building Code.
So it's a national building code.
That's a definition. That is a definition. But what is it?
So
what does it?
it is used as the practicing norms for each and every, means like there are particular kind of parts in their volume 1 for which all the
Amey,
construction
your voice is actually echoing a lot. I cannot make out what you're saying. Can you actually
Hello?
get off the speaker system or what?
so
Yeah.
now it's clear, sir.
Yes, please go ahead.
So NBC has two parts in which first part they have given the means volume 1. Volume 1 they have given the this thing construction based safeties and all, and working norms and all. Hello.
Okay. Can
And
someone
volume
give
2
me a
is
better definition of this? You're almost right, but I need a better definition than what you have said. It has to be simple that somebody can understand.
The legally binding guidelines.
I don't think so. NBC is legally binding. I'll talk about this particular point. Anybody
Sir,
else?
it's a guideline for the practitioner to provide a minimum standard for the fire and life safety.
Very good. This is the actual definition. The National Building Code is the minimum requirements of the building. It is not anything other than the minimum requirement. So whatever the minimum requirement is, that is specified in the NBC. And you don't have to aim to achieve the minimum. It is your goal to achieve more than the minimum, not just the passing marks. And the NBC is not mandatory. NBC is just a prescription. And when the local bodies or whenever the agency adopts the NBC, it becomes mandatory then. For example, NBC doesn't say itself that you have to follow what I'm saying. But say when Vijayawada municipal says that any building that is made in Vijayawada will be built as per the NBC, the minimum requirements specified in the NBC, then it becomes mandatory. So this is one of the corrections I wanted to make in what I heard. So now that you know what an NBC is, so I just wanted to put in front of you that there are 13 parts of NBC, starting from part 0 to part 12. And the part 4 of the NBC is something that relates to this lecture. It is fire and life safety, the part 4. So as a background and something as you should know that worldwide building codes that are made are actually of two types. One is a specification type, or it is sometimes called the prescriptive type. And the second is there are something called the performance codes. So some international codes are the performance. So when I say prescriptive code, this means that they prescribe a set of measures to attain a goal. Matlab ki they do not explain how to reach the goal. They will define that you have to achieve this. And they will provide a set of measures by which they'll tell you how to achieve a goal. But they will not tell you how to reach the goal. On the other side, there you have something called the performance code. So performance code, what they will do is they will prescribe the objectives to be accomplished. And they will provide the designer with an option that you choose whatever you want to choose. You choose whatever method you want to choose that will help you achieve the objective. So in more advanced, I would say construction, in the more advanced economies, performance code is the preferred method, and slowly worldwide, the building codes are slowly moving towards performance-based code. In India, we right now are just struggling with implementing the prescriptive codes. Probably someday we will also kind of graduate to the performance codes. And again, I will reinforce that the part 4 of the NBC addresses just the minimum requirements. And we have to strive to actually achieve more than what minimum is needed. So this completes the second concept I wanted to convey. Now, there's another part to it, the contents. The part 4 actually has some 6 clauses over there. So all the FLS issues are covered in the 6 clauses. And there are annexures also mentioned in this. So if you look on your left-hand side, you will be able to see the annexure also. So there are 2 things that the annexures contain. One is some reference data, and the second is some special requirements for different building occupancies. So for example, you will see some special occupancies like the high-rise building, commercial kitchens, car parking facilities. So they have special occupancy requirements that are listed over here. And at the end of the part 4, always in every part of the NBC, you will see list of standards. That means that all the IS codes that are related to fire would be visible over here. So it is advisable that you keep a copy of NBC handy at all times, even during this course and even when you enter the profession. So you should always keep an electronic copy of your NBC in your phone or in your computer laptop so that you can look at it. It's very simple how to read it. Now there are other fire codes also that you must just be aware of the names. There is a US-based code that was started in 1895. It is called the NFPA. It is one of the most respected building codes related to fire. It stands for National Fire Protection Association. It started in the eastern part of the US in the 1895. Then there's another building code by the name of ICC. So ICC is International Code Council. It started sometime in 1994 and is slowly gaining popularity everywhere. So if you are doing any project in the Middle East, it is a definite thing that it will be built on the ICC model. Then the British have their own code. ISO also creates its own code, and almost every country has its own building code. Some countries have not made their code, they just adopt a code that they find is more useful for them. So after completing the 2 concepts, let's move on to the third concept. And I would say this is the most important term in the NBC or any matters related to fire. So I would say, ask you a question. What is the means of egress? Egress hota kya hai? Can anybody tell me what does egress mean? Don't go by the definition that I've written on the slide. You have to explain it in your own words. Okay. So I would say that egress is the path that is available for a person to leave the building. So that means that in case of a fire, the name of the path that a person is expected to take will be called the egress. Now the word that is written is means of egress. Means of egress means that, it is a path in case of a fire you are going to take, and this means of egress will always remain unobstructed, and any door that is on this route cannot be subject to locking. Remember the Upahar example where the fire exits were locked? And this means of egress can be horizontal or vertical. And means of egress has 3 components. That's why it is called the means of egress. There is something called an exit access. Matlab ki this is the path from any part of the building that you will take to reach something called an exit. And exit means it could be a door, it could be in a multi-story building, it could be an enclosed stairway, it could be a doorway, it could be a staircase, lobby, ramp, veranda, corridor, passage that leads to something called the exit discharge. So the 3 components are exit access, exit, and exit discharge. Now, remember, while designing the means of egress, the main inputs that people would need, the designer would need, is the occupant load. The occupant load will come from something when you define the occupancy, building ki occupancy kya hai. Then width of access kitna chahiye? How much, what width do you need for the safe exit of this entire occupants of the building? And then the last one would be the number of exits that you would need to discharge the entire population in the building. So I would again emphasize one thing. This concept is the most important concept in the entire FLS. I would repeat it. Everybody should be aware of these terms, because when you cannot, after completing this education at SPA, you cannot use loose terms. You have to use the terms that are written in front of you. There is something called an exit access, there is something called an exit, and there is something called an exit discharge. And the building code gives you very specific requirements needed for all the three of them. So any questions or anything that you want to ask about this means of egress?
No, sir.
Okay, so just remember one of the things of exit discharge. I'm going to just go back to a couple of slides and I'll just show you something. Now, in this particular one, in the Kumbakonam, the staircase was the staircase where it had an exit discharge was at the plinth level, and there is a plinth difference between the public street and the plinth of the building. So imagine when the children are running and they find a level difference, what will happen? So many people will get injured and somebody will get trampled also. That happens everywhere. So exit discharge is that when you reach the public street, it is assumed that you will be safe. So now that completes the third component of the basic concepts. Now we'll move on to something called classification of building. So can somebody tell me what is iski zarat kya hai buildings ko classify karne ki? Why do we need to classify the buildings?
So
get the occupancy loads
have been followed, which are
Okay,
provided by the NBC and other fire codes and other residential building or educational building codes.
That's not very convincing to me. Anybody else?
to get the occupancy load.
ठीक है, that is okay. Other than that,
each building uses different purposes. It serves different purposes.
Exactly right. So what it means is that the fire requirements in a residential building will be very different from that of an office building, and fire requirements of a hazardous building will be very different from the educational building. So once we classify the building, we will know what kind of fire requirements do we have to provide for. So in our NBC, we have defined 9 types of buildings based on their occupancy, and they are named from group A to group J based on the hazard they involve. So we all know that residential occupancy is something that we all know very well because we are very used to it. Then you'll be surprised to know that group C, which is the institutional building, it is a building in which the liberty of the people inside, the occupants, is restricted. So can anybody tell me if SPA Vijayawada is an educational or an institutional occupancy?
It's institutional, sir.
So institutional, I told you, is that liberty of the inmates is restricted. For example, one of the examples of institutional would be something like a jail. So now would anybody want to amend their answers?
Educational.
Right. So in terms of fire, we have to follow the classification that the NBC gives. But in loose talks, what we do is that, yaar, ये हमारा college है, ये institutional है, institution है. So we generally use some casual terms to describe the occupancies. So now that you know that there are 9 types of building occupancies that are specified in the NBC, and they are all classified under, they are all described under the clause 3.1. Then each of these occupancy is further divided into subdivisions. For example, in front of you, what you can see is the group A occupancy has 6 subdivisions. So each of these subdivisions will have their own occupancy requirements. Then another example I have put in front of you is the subdivision of the occupancy C, which is the institutional. So in this category, you have something called C1, which is for hospitals. C2 is for custodial institutions. C3 is something like jail and mental institutions. So all of these will have, just because the person is in a restricted area doesn't mean that his life safety we will not take care of. Our building codes will take care of those also. So the fire requirements for these are also specified. And requirement for each subdivision is different. So this is the fourth concept. Remember, we have 9 of them. Now, this is one concept I know is not very directly related to what you people will be doing, but it is nice to know that once you are getting into fire and life safety, so it is nice to know this particular concept called the fire zones. So what the fire zone means is that we have to ensure that the building of a high hazard does not pose danger to a building of a low fire risk. So you cannot put a factory just next to something like a very a dangerous storage building. So that's why what the people do is that in the master plans of the cities, they divide the city into fire zones, and they they do this division based on the existing layout, the type of building construction that has already happened, and what is the occupancy type. So largely the main cities, the large cities would have 3 fire zones, but the smaller cities will have 1 or 2 fire zones. Similarly, just like these fire zones, the 3 fire zones that you see listed in front of you, there will be something called a construction type. I have not shown it over here, but there is something called a construction type. So our NBC specifies 4 construction types: class type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4. So what happens is that in the classification or in the description of these construction types, it specifies, the NBC specifies that if you have walls in the type 1 construction, it would have to provide a 4-hour of fire protection. A fire barrier is the right word. If you have the columns, they should be able to resist the fire for so many hours. So specific requirements will be given of the type of construction. And that is also an important concept that you can read when you look at the NBC. Now, this is one of the very important things that you will find that most of the people miss out. It is the 6th basic concept, and it is the fire hazard due to the surface finishes. Matlab ye hai ki, it's important that we understand the fire hazard that can be caused due to the surface finishes. In common sense, we can say that combustible surface finishes on the walls and ceilings, including the external facades, tend to spread the fire. So that if you have anything on the walls that is flammable, that will help the fire to spread out. So there are 4 classes of surface finishes. So the word they use over here is class. Class 1, class 2, class 3, and class 4. Class 1 is the lower part of the spectrum where surfaces very low flame is spread. And class 4 is where the surfaces where very rapid flaming will spread. So can somebody give me an example of class 1 and class 4? So if you have a wooden paneling on the wall, that would constitute class 4. Something in plywood or something in blockboard or something in things that will cause the fire to spread. So वो सब चीज आ जाएगा class 4 में. And then in class 1, you will have surfaces that will not let the fire to spread that much. So one of the fires that is very famous worldwide for that got affected is because of the external cladding. Can somebody tell me ki kaun si cheez hai? Which fire is it that was spread because of the surface cladding? Okay, I'll just come to that in a minute. There's one concept that you must know, that even if you are using a class 4 surface, you can use it, but you have to actually treat it with the fire retardant. And that is, you have a lot of choices where you can use this. So you have something called intumescent paints that you can use on the wall. So they're expensive paints, and if you use that on the class 4 surfaces, the fire they will not allow the fire to be spread. So now we were talking about one example where the fire was caused because of the external cladding, and this is the thing. It was the Grenfell Tower in London. So if you look closely, this fire happened in 2017. So the fire actually burned for 60 hours before it was finally extinguished. And the reason, there was on the 4th floor of this building, there was a malfunctioning fridge. And that caught fire, and the fire spread through the building exterior. The building exterior had a new external cladding that was made. And the cladding was done with a cheap cladding material. And it had some kind of an insulation on the outside. And from an insulation, there was a surface. And from the external surface, there was a 2-inch gap. So through the 2-inch gap, the fire actually built up and spread. So this is the building plan that you can see, that there is a small lobby. There is a small lobby. There is only one staircase and the lift core. So around this building core, you have the residential apartments all around it. Now, if you see, there is the orange portion. There is something, an apartment, which from where the fire started. It's on the 4th floor. And on the right hand side, you can see how the fire spread. And it spread vertically. So if you see, there's a 2-inch gap that is shown in one of the diagrams of the external cladding. Imagine just a 2-inch gap in the external cladding that acted as a conduit for fire and smoke to spread through the buildings. The windows would have been all locked out, but still the fire managed to get past them. It was a very horrific incident because there was no space for people to escape. There was only one staircase, and that caused the whole confusion. And then you had something like a Delhi guest house fire of 2019 again. So in this particular case, the corridors were paneled with wood and ply, and varnish was applied to give them a very rich looking finish. So the fire started somewhere, and what happened is that because of these panels and varnish, it spread through the entire building and rooms. So the people, 17 guests got killed in this fire. So as a part of a project manager, whenever you graduate and reach that position, you'll have to watch out कि कई बार क्या होता है, consultant actually misses out what kind of surface finishes he has provided. And there's usually they hire something like an interior designer to do the interiors of the building. And it is out of the architect's scope. And interior designers don't quite pay attention to these kind of factors. So as a project manager, if you encounter some product for which you will get catalogs on the site when it's built, you should be careful to see what class of surface finish is it. So one of the products that you can see, Ajkal, they are very popular, and they are used to hide the seepages on the wall or some wall pay distortion. They are called the PVC panels. So they look quite good, and they give a lot of texture to the wall, and they're easy to clean also. But you need to check whether it contributes to fire or smoke, or is it a hazard if they're used in the corridors or inside the rooms. So these are some things that you must keep in mind. Sometimes what happens is that on the site, if a particular material is not available, or if the contractor is trying to save money, he will say that listen, I'm substituting the material for this and this. And the substitution, what he does, he says that it will look the same. It will not be different. It is just that I'm not finding that material in the market. At that point of time, you should be cautious when you allow the substitution to happen. So this was the sixth concept that I wanted to tell you. Now, remember in the third concept, I had talked about the most important concept of the fire life safety. That was the means of egress. Now, the second most important concept, according to me, is something called the table 7 of the NBC. Now, just having access to this table has caused many people to become firefighting consultants. That means that this table is so elaborate and such a nice table that people just who have access to it will use it and they will claim to be firefighting experts. Now, if you are on your mobiles or whatever, just I would like to zoom into each of the headings and try and read what is written over there. So at this point, if you would just like to zoom into the table, and okay, before that, I'll just tell you what this table is all about. This table actually specifies the requirement of fire detection and alarm system for each occupancy. So it means that whatever fire requirements are required, the active system, they are listed here. And you can see there are 14 columns to this table. So the way to read this table is you first look at the occupancy you have. The occupancy types are listed in the rows. So you see something called the residential buildings in the class A occupancy. Then you look at the top. So the column 2 talks about the building occupancy. Then you will have from column 3 to column 10. They are all grouped under type of installations. So various kind of things are written. So for a house, a residential occupancy, which has up to 15 rooms, you will see something is required and something is NR. NR is not required. And something is required with a note also. For example, an automatic sprinkler system is sometimes it's required with a note. So all of these requirements are listed from the type of installation are listed in something from column 3 to column 10. Water supply is listed under column 11 and 12. So the 11 and 12 are grouped under something called the water supply. So 11 is for the underground static tank. The 12 is for the terrace tanks over every tower. Then the column 13 and 14 are grouped under something called pump capacity. So it's so looking at the table and the occupancy, you can find out what is required in your building and what is not. Now let us look at two more examples of this. So in the educational building over here, you see there are there are different criteria given that if the building is less than 15-meter height, if the building is more than 15 meters, or if it is above 24 meters but not exceeding 30 meters. So every time you see these kind of variation, you can see that the terrace tank capacity changes in the column 12. You will see the pump requirements also changes. So based on these complexities of the occupancies, you will see that certain criteria over here get changed. In business buildings also, there are some things that are listed here. So I again repeat, just having access to table 7, and even if you don't know anything about how to read the drawings or how to interpret the drawings, or if you have to check if the consultant has provided for everything that is required or not. So the minimum requirements, you can check it in table 7. Ye to minimum hona hi chahiye. And then the additional things we'll look at in the other parts of the code. But these are the minimum requirements that are definitely needed for the active firefighting systems. And your entire rest of the course is dependent on this very table. That they'll try and what we will try and teach you is what a fire extinguisher is, what is a wet riser, what is a down riser, what is a yard hydrant. So, and what are the requirements for the underground tanks or the overhead tanks. what are the requirements for pumps. Everything will come out of this table only. Remember, our building codes are prescriptive. It tells us what to do. So this completes the 7th basic concept. Now, the 8th concept is something, a very elementary thing. I would say this is the basis of design that everybody has to use. This is worldwide. It means that when you talk about fire and the fire design, it is dependent on one of these two diagrams. Earlier, there used to be something called a fire triangle, but now it's obsolete. They talk something about a fire tetrahedron. So the concept is, in the fire triangle, you see, there are 3 components listed on the 3 sides. One is a heat, one is a oxygen, one is a fuel. So it shows that there are 3 essential elements that are needed to start a fire or to sustain a fire. So to start and sustain a fire, you need 3 things. The ignition can be provided by an electrical thing or by some cigarette butt or something else also. But the 3 components these are the 3 essential things. So the theory is that if you remove any one of them, the fire will extinguish on its own. So one of the options is that you can starve the fire. That is that you can limit the fuel. If something is burning, remove the unburnt material from there and you will starve the fire. This is easier said than done. The other is you can smother the fire or you can blanket the fire. That means that you can limit the amount of oxygen available. And the third thing is that you can limit the temperature. When you say the temperature, when you limit the temperature, the ignition will not happen. That means that as soon as the fire is started, you do something that the temperature of that room actually falls down. And one of the systems that is used is called the water mist system. Water mist, M-I-S-T, water mist system. And there'll be other options also that you can use in this thing. Then sometime later, they realized that, this concept is a very old concept and it has not worked also well. So they said that there is another system by which the fire can also start, and that is the chemical chain reaction. Excuse me. So they say that the 4th element, the chemical chain reaction, also has to be considered. So they put that also into this diagram, and they had something called a tetrahedron. So this is the diagram is an unfolded tetrahedron in front of you, the fire tetrahedron. So again, in this, the central idea, they have put the chemical chain reaction in the center because they think that the key of stopping the fire is to stop the chain reaction from occurring because of combination of all the 3 elements. That if you can stop the combination of these 3 elements, that is a better way of approaching a design. Now, if you were to do a PhD or if you were to do a very extensive study on the fire designing principles, you will use these principles that you will be able to appreciate it then. But just for now, just know that there is something called a fire tetrahedron, which has 4 components, and there is something called a fire triangle, which is almost an obsolete concept, which has 3 components. So there are many practical ways by which you can achieve this. But more important is that we understand, the first thing that you will need is to understand the type of fire or the fire classification. So the example in front of you as a 9th concept is that fire is sometimes classified into 5 groups, and some places you will see it classified into 6 groups. So the idea is that once you are aware of the building occupancy and the use, you will decide what kind of fire might occur. So you may think that in this, in a residential occupancy, mostly it will be a class A type of fire. So you will provide the firefighting system to address predominantly the class A type of fires. So all the extinguishers and provisions will be designed to do this. If you were to do a electrical panel room or something, you will know that you cannot use the class A fire. So you will use an appropriate thing where you will say, okay, I'm going to use a specialized equipment of carbon dioxide based extinguishing system to douse the fire in an electrical panel room. So, and at sometimes you will realize that, supposing there's an electrical fire. So the normal procedure to handle the electrical fire is that you switch off and cut off the electricity, and then use any appropriate method to handle what stuff is burning. So the classification of fire is something that you should know, is that there are in front of you, there are these 5 types of classification. At times there is a 6th classification group also. So we have almost reached the end of our part 1 of our lectures. So let's do a quick recap of what we learned. So the first thing we learned was that the right term is fire life safety and not firefighting system. I would say not use the word right, the more appropriate term. Then we learned that the part 4 of the NBC addresses the minimum requirement of building from the fire life safety issues and the contents of the NBC part 4. We learned about those. The third concept that we learned was the means of egress, and we related it to the examples of fires that we saw in the early part of the presentation. And then we learned about the fourth concept we learned is the classification of building based on the occupancy. And then we saw the subdivisions, and we learned that fire life safety requirements for each subdivision is defined in the NBC. The fifth concept we learned was the fire zones, and we briefly touched upon something called the construction types. Then the sixth concept we learned was the classes of the surface finishes. That means the perils it can cause by choosing an incorrect class. Then we learned in the seventh concept, we learned that the most important component of NBC is the table 7. We learned that this is the best ready reckoner for the firefighting system requirement. And then in the eighth concept, we learned about the fire triangle and the fire tetrahedron. Lastly, we learned the classification of fire. So we learned that there were X number of classification types. So at this stage, I think so we have almost exceeded a mandate of 40 minutes. We have actually been 1 hour into the class. And I think so, I don't know about you, but I think so we could take a break. What do you guys say? Or do you want us to continue? Please feel free to actually say, because you know the next part is going to be a little heavy. And I think so you need to take a call over here. I can continue, but I need you to take a call whether you want to continue or take a break.
You can continue.
So we'll take a break.
Okay, so for how much time do you think?
So 10 minutes.
Okay, so let's do it that it's 11 o'clock right now. Let's meet at 11:15.
Okay, sir.
Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
11:15 we'll meet again.
Yes, sir.
Okay.